What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Mac Kiteboarding. This is Jake, and today we are talking about kiteboarding safety equipment. So it's going to be a little bit meandering, but we're going to talk about really the must-haves, some stuff that are nice to have, especially in the event of something going wrong, and then what you should keep your eyes on when you're out there with your own quiver to make sure you have the best experience out there possible. So I think my number one piece of kiteboarding safety equipment would probably be my wetsuit. The big reason for that is it's not only going to add a little bit of buoyancy, a little bit of impact protection, but it's really going to do a good job of keeping you warm. And in the event of something going wrong, here in Michigan, a couple times I go down pier length out, and it's a little early or late in the season, I really need to have an appropriate wetsuit if I'm going to do that swim in. Hypothermia is a real thing, and you always want to wear a wetsuit that will basically allow you to survive the swim in from the furthest point out. That's kind of how I think about it. And understand things do occasionally go wrong. Wind directions can shift, you can get wrapped up in your gear, and it can take you a little bit of time to recover and get back in. So I think being properly suited is really, really important. That's not only your core wetsuit, but think about booties, gloves, a beanie or a hoodie. Those are places that shed a lot of warmth. So I think every session you should be mindful of that and plan for the worst. Plus it just results in a more comfortable session. When I got my long sleeve on, even in the summer, it's just a little bit of extra warmth on those long days. I don't need to put on sunscreen there for when I accidentally forget that. So it's just a little bit of an added perk. Guys, if you enjoy these meandering stream of consciousness videos where we just talk about all things kite theory, feel free to like and subscribe. I would say probably then my second piece of safety equipment that I recommend for kite surfing would be the flotation vest. Kind of like the wetsuit again, there's a couple different functions. You do get that added flotation. A lot of brands don't have a Coast Guard certified vest. And the reason for that is just the certification process and the cost that goes along with that. But that doesn't mean that they still don't have buoyancy. They do offer impact protection as well, in addition to a little bit of core warmth, so that's nice. I would be lying if I said I always wore my vest, but on those really heavy wind, big wave days, I'm always appreciative that I have it in my car and ready to go. You do generally want to get one with a kiteboarding specific cut. It's going to be a little thinner down here to accommodate your harness, and then you're going to have more padding up here. Probably one of my favorites is the Mystic Block Vest because that is a high kiteboarding cut. It just works really well when you have your harness on, and understand how a vest fits will vary a little bit if you're wearing a seat or a waist or shorts harness. So just bear that in mind when you're picking yours out. We do try to offer a large selection and a flexible return policy. It's really important to get that right. With any piece of safety equipment, I think you want something that feels comfortable, that feels good, that you trust, because that's going to encourage you to wear it. I know growing up, my parents used to get me really dorky helmets. They didn't quite fit right because you needed to have a helmet when you were riding the bike. But the problem was it wasn't fit to me, the kid. So the moment they looked away, I would take off without my helmet because I didn't enjoy wearing it. So when you do have safety equipment, make sure that it's comfortable and it's something you vibe with. You like the colors, or I think a nice thing about getting bright colors is it's always really easy to point out to friends or family who you are on the water. Or God forbid, if you get pulled way out and you want the Coast Guard to find you, high vis is nice. But again, like inject a little personality into it so you feel comfortable wearing it. Some other things you should be mindful of: always make sure your harness has a hook knife. I have never used mine personally, but there are pieces of equipment where that 1 in 1,000 times you need to use it. It is going to be the piece of equipment that potentially saves your life. So again, always make sure that you have that with you. If you have a bar that goes bad, maybe bust it out on those lines and chop it just so you know what's going on, and occasionally inspect it, make sure there's not rust. And it's one of those things where you're a kid and you kind of play the draw game and you pull out the shooter real quick. You want to be able to reach exactly for that hook knife. So really memorize where it is, because if you need it, you generally won't have a second to delay to fumble around and try to remember which pouch you left it in. On that note, safety leashes. This is a pretty common accessory. Everybody should ride with it. That allows you to fully deploy your kite and it'll flag out to the single line. Without a safety leash, you can still deploy your kite in bon voyage. Remember, kites tumble and they generally become, they'll tumble into the wind, so it'll lay like fairly flat and efficient, and you generally can recoup it. But again, it's just smart to have that safety leash. I pull my safety all the time, whether I just find myself landing a bad trick, all of a sudden the wind gets a little strange with the storm front, or I'm just using a landing technique and I want to essentially neuter that kite with power so I can get it down safely. So just make sure you have it. Generally, it's not something you forget. My little trick with that is I get one that's kind of colorful. It kind of vibes with my outfit, so to speak. So it's always there. It's an easy call out when I look at my equipment to be like, oh yeah, perfect. There's the big bright pink safety leash. I'm good to go. I think some other pieces of equipment that could be important to think about, but they're not ones like maybe commonly used. Helmet, this is gonna vary by where you're kiting. I think if you're in an area where there's a lot of debris, a lot of trees, rocks along the shoreline, or if you're out kiting and who only knows where, there's like trees or something, it's good to have. In the event you wipe out and you get pulled into something. I'm not sure quite how much protection it's going to provide for impact on the water when you hit that water. There's a lot of mixed research on there as to whether having that extra surface area can actually lead to like a higher rate of concussion, but we're not going to get into the science behind all of that. I think the general rule is if there's kind of a sketchy launch or land or debris, it's not a bad idea to have a helmet. Because it's really going to be protecting you in case you have a little kite mare there. I think another important piece to have can be safety glasses or sunglasses out there. One, we're getting a lot of UV exposure out there, plus the sun hitting the water and shining back. That's just a lot of wear and tear on the eyes. So if you want to age gracefully, it's a nice accessory to have. But also, you're going to wipe out, you're going to get splashed in the eyes, especially with foiling or winging. If that foil pops up, that can be a barrier layer that stops that from hitting you. So with kite foiling, that can be an extra protective piece. And then you want to think a little bit about like a traditional sunglasses lens versus something with an external frame that's not as likely to fold inward and cause like shrapnel to enter your eyes. That would be terrible. So we got those two accessories. I think earplugs can be nice. The eardrum injuries can be fairly common in kiteboarding. People jumping and basically landing with their ear flat on the water. That kind of pressure can cause damage there. It's not something that happens a lot, but it's something to be mindful of. So if you're going through the checklist of things that you're willing to risk it versus things you just won't tolerate, that's something to be mindful of as well. Okay, the last one I'm gonna throw out there, and I almost shudder to mention this because they have such a checkered past, is the board leash. Modern board leashes, they tend to, like the real reinforced leash, they spool out, so you create quite a bit of distance between you and your board if you do fall, and then you can retract that and get back to your board. Leashes of old, they didn't have that feature, so what would happen is sometimes you would catch an edge and your board would submerge. You would loop your kite and go flying, and you essentially created like this elastic rubber band effect where all of a sudden that released and it went flying through the air. That's part of the origin for the impact vest, which we now call flotation vests, and helmets. Those things would be rocketing at you, and you really did need protection to survive the impact from that, or at least like keep your head all in one piece. So don't do a Google search on that. Just be grateful that the technology has evolved. And I do think it's a pretty viable option for people in this day and age. With that said, I do think you shouldn't use it to necessarily get around being able to body drag back to your board. That's just an important skill to have. But if you do have that and you just want the ease of use, if there's a lot of like real mean current or waves, and you just want to use that to get back to your board as quickly as possible, that's a great option. If you're a new rider, maybe look at something like the Ocean Rodeo Gojo. It's an inflatable tube that you put between your on your handle hole and your foot strap, and then it'll cause your board to blow over. And when it's up, it acts as a little sail, so your board will carry itself either kind of back to you or sometimes away from you, but you at least will be able to see it versus the classic upside down in the waves, and that thing is gone. I can't tell you how many times I've lost a board, and I send my kite when I'm in the water so I can get about 10 feet up and try to scan the horizon for it. So the Gojo, even though it looks a little kooky, is a great solution to that problem. So all in all, I think it's important when you go out for a session to be mindful and kind of plan for the worst. So just say, what again are my allowances for risk here, and what don't I want to play around with? So again, like a vest for me on a calm day, I probably won't throw one on, but on a really gnarly day where there's big waves and I'm not quite sure how much I want to swim in, I'm going to throw on a vest. It's just really great for peace of mind. Same if I go to a really rocky area and I'm kind of traversing down the shore to get into the water, I might throw on a helmet because gosh forbid I loop my kite around something and I go flying. I want to live to kite another day. At the end of the day, with safety stuff, always remember we're in America, so our deductibles are high. Don't be afraid to just let that kite go. Chances are your deductible is higher than the cost of kite replacement. So just really get in the habit of being comfortable with your safety gear. Love your safety gear, get fun colors, get good fits, check in on it, make sure you always know where it's at, maybe have a few spare pieces, and always live to kite another day. I think that's a great mindset to have, and you'll have a whole lifelong love of kiting. Guys, thanks for checking us out. This has been Jake with MACkite.